All right, let's talk about cutting things from your budget. We're diving into 11 things you can stop spending money on right now, and you probably won't even miss them. This all comes from Chelsea at The Financial Diet, and it's a really smart look at the expenses we think we need, but, well, we actually don't.
So let me just ask you this right off the bat, because it's the big question that hangs over this whole topic. Take a hard look at your own spending. Are the things you tell yourself are necessities really necessary? It seems simple, but getting honest about that can save you a ton of money.
And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. We get so used to certain expenses that they feel essential. They feel like part of the foundation of our lives. But the whole secret here isn't about depriving yourself. It's about realizing that some of those necessities are just habits you can break, and you might not even notice they're gone.
And that brings us to this idea of the necessity illusion. This is all about the psychology of how our simple wants have this sneaky way of morphing into things we feel like we absolutely cannot live without.
Okay, so the very first step is just being honest with yourself. And to make this a little more concrete, we're going to group Chelsea's 11 budget cuts into 3 big psychological traps. The goal here isn't just to see what she cut, but to help you spot these same patterns in your own spending. All right, trap number 1 is a big one. It's the aspirational spending trap. This is all about buying things for a fantasy version of yourself. You know, the person you think you'll be someday.
And wow, just this quote, just say it all. It's that feeling, that little bit of magical thinking that if you just buy the thing, the fancy gym membership, the cool outfit, you will suddenly become the person who uses it. It's buying a lifestyle, not an item.
So from her list, we've got 3 perfect examples of this. That fancy gym that you maybe go to once a month, those novelty clothes for some event that's never gonna happen, and jewelry that you feel like you're supposed to own, but it just sits in a box.
And here is just a perfect, almost painfully real example of that. The fantasy is, oh, I'll be this chic, fancy person who has somewhere to wear this. But the reality? It's a very specific robin's egg blue coat that was worn exactly 3 times. Just think about the cost per wear on that. It's wild.
So the lesson here is actually super simple. Be honest about your actual real day-to-day life. Buy things for the person you are right now, not the person you think a credit card swipe will magically turn you into.
Okay, on to our second big trap, lifestyle creep. This is what happens when our spending just sort of expands to match our income or our social circle, often without actually making us any happier.
And this thing tends to work in a cycle, doesn't it? First, you pay more to live in the cool neighborhood. Then, to fit in, you start doing what everyone else does, like always ordering that drink with dinner. And before you know it, you have friends who you only see for, you guessed it, expensive drinks.
And you just gotta love the honesty here. The hype is that this is the place to be, where all the cool kids are. But the reality? You're paying way too much for rent. And, to quote directly, you're probably going to be surrounded by assholes.
And here's where the math really starts to hurt. That one obligatory drink you didn't even really want, that's another $8 to $15 on your tab. If you do that just once a week, you're looking at spending up to $780 a year on drinks you felt pressured to buy.
Our third and final trap is maybe the sneakiest of them all. It's the high cost of a good deal. These are the purchases that fool you into thinking you're being savvy and saving money, but they're really just money pits in disguise.
So you gotta ask yourself this question. When does that thrill of getting a discount completely cloud your judgment? When does getting 50% off something you don't really need just become 100% of your money wasted?
And we've got 3 classic examples here. First, fast fashion. It feels like a steal, but you have to replace it constantly. Then there's that expensive makeup you buy without even trying a sample. Big mistake. And finally, my personal favorite are email vices.
You know the deal with fast fashion, right? The promise is you get to be trendy for cheap. But the reality is, the quality is usually so bad that the stuff falls apart after a few wears. So you're just on this treadmill of constantly buying more to replace it. It's not cheaper in the long run.
But this quote about sale emails, oh man, this is so real. It's about a J. Crew sale alert, and that feeling it creates, it's like her hair was on fire. It's pure manufactured urgency. And what's the result? Panic buying a pair of shorts that she flat out admits she didn't even need. That feeling is designed to make you spend. Okay, so we've looked at these 3 big traps. But the real question is, how do you apply this to your own life?
Because at the end of the day, the best budget cuts, the ones that stick, are always deeply personal.
Now let's just look at a couple more quick examples from her list. She cut red meat at home. It was pricey and she wanted to eat healthier. She also cut breakfast because she does intermittent fasting and just wasn't a breakfast person to begin with. The point isn't that you should stop eating breakfast. The point is to ask, what are my default expenses? What am I paying for just out of habit?
Look, none of this is about making yourself miserable or depriving yourself of joy. It's really about mindful spending. It's about having the guts to be brutally honest about where your money is going and asking that one simple question. Does this really, truly make my life better?
And you know what? There is so much freedom in that honesty. You are officially given permission to just opt out. If you hate jewelry, don't buy it, just because you think a grown woman is supposed to have a nice necklace. You don't have to own anything that you don't actually want.
So I'm going to leave you with this final question. Let's get specific. Think about those J.Crew emails. We all have that one store, the one whose sale alerts feel like a personal emergency. What's yours? Seriously, just identifying that one trigger is an amazing first step to taking back control. Thanks for joining me.